Mini episode 1659 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge Mini Episode 1659. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris here with one of our favorite FDH Lounge dignitaries, our good pal Russ Cohen, the proprietor of Sportsology and 10-time author, here for our annual breakdown previewing the 2023-2024 NHL season. We always convene to take a look at what's coming up this time of year. And after an interesting off-season, following a very interesting season, of course, we come into this one here, and a lot of potential powers jockeying at the top, it would seem like, for this year's Stanley Cup. Good to have you on, Russ.
Yeah, I'm doing good. I can't wait for this season. I think it'll be a lot of fun, and I think there'll be some unpredictability.
There will be. And you talk about unpredictable last year. I don't know that a lot of us might have seen the Stanley Cup hangover that both Colorado and Tampa Bay had. Maybe in the case of Tampa Bay, a little bit more foreseeable since it was their third straight time to the final. But in their wake, it ended up being Boston with a historically dominant regular season. And it's funny, I was reviewing my predictions last year, preseason predictions for the playoffs, and I picked Florida over Boston in the first round, albeit in 5 games. And again, it played out with Florida over Boston, but it played out in a way that was so much more dramatic than anybody could have believed, with Boston having a historic level of success in the regular season, going up 3-1 and then blowing it to Florida. So that is one of the very big stories coming into this season is what's going to happen with them. Of course, some retirements off of the Bruins. They were a team that was already kind of aging. You and I looked at them as a team that was probably more of a borderline playoff team last year anyways, and they may be that again this year. But boy, in between, they ended up doing a lot of very, very historically unlikely things.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got lucky. Boston turned out to be a juggernaut during the regular season, and I just think for some reason it just didn't work. But this year is different. This year they're really going to struggle more. They don't have a lot of guys at the center position. Pavel's out there going to hope to play like a top 6 role at center, which he hasn't done at the NHL level. They have good goaltending. They have a very good blue line. I think their top 2 lines are good for scoring. I think after that they're going to start to have some issues scoring. So they're used to being a couple-line team, but now they're going to have to do that, like you said, without Krejci and Bergeron. Bringing back Lucic isn't going to add them a lot of goals. So we'll see. I think they're going to struggle a lot. They might make the playoffs, but I wouldn't bet on it.
Well, you've got Boston coming off of the season that they had, the high highs and the low lows of the way that it ended. You've got in the off season here Columbus with their whole decision to first of all hire Mike Babcock and then fire Mike Babcock for being Mike Babcock. So you've got that whole fumble of the bag that they did in Columbus, which is the way that franchise has gone for the better part of its history. What do you see as some of the other big stories of the off season, Russ?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Babcock story was a big one. We're also learning now that some of the RFAs are going to possibly hold out for the season with Trevor Zegras and Shane. And so, that doesn't happen a lot in hockey. It happens a lot in football. So that's something where that could be a storyline. Not so much for Anaheim, but for Ottawa as a contending team. So that could be a big deal. I think, like you said, we've had some guys retiring. I think the other thing is there's a lot of guys there's a mixture of guys being banged up and guys sort of being held out of preseason games, just sort of like being in bubble wrap. So we're starting to see a little more of that because teams don't want to lose their players. They want to start out strong out of the gate. And so if you don't play, you do get rusty. So we're going to see how that works out. A lot of that played out in the NFL this year, mostly not to teams' advantages, and we'll see in the NHL. I think the same thing will happen, though.
Very possibly, and of course, the NFL with the much smaller sample size, it can be disastrous getting off to a slow start, but in the NHL, there can be some very early reactions, too, because I'm trying to think back, like, when Joel Quenneville became coach of the Blackhawks, wasn't that like 3 games into the season or something?
You're talking about when Denny Savard was out?
I think so. I'm trying to remember. Whoever was there previously, it was like 3 games into the season. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, I think that was Denny Savard, and he had just worn out his welcome. Same thing happened a few other times in history. I think Laviolette, the 1 year in Philly, only lasted like 3 to 5 games as well, into like his 3rd season, something like that. So it does happen, but I think with Columbus, they're lucky the season didn't start. Yeah,
that was just another weird, regrettable thing in the history of what has been largely a weird and regrettable franchise throughout its history. But looking at this season here, going through division by division as we are prone to do here, and starting as we generally do with the Atlantic Division, this is one where, again, and my predictions, of course, can be seen in Fantasy Hockey Draftology 2023, available on the main page at fantasydrafthelp.com. A joint production of fantasydrafthelp.com, Sportsology, and the FDH Lounge. I've got in the Atlantic Division, I've got a real bunch up towards the top in the Atlantic Division. I've got Toronto, Tampa Bay, Florida, Boston, in that order. I've got them all kind of jammed up. I think from there it ends up being a wild race for what will be probably the last playoff spot, because I think there's 3 big powers in the Metropolitan Division. And I do have it going to Detroit in the end with the DeBrincat deal, but you've got Detroit, you've got Buffalo in the mix. You look at the other division, you've probably got to put, in my estimation, the Islanders, Pittsburgh, Washington in there to some degree. I've got, again, Buffalo as part of that mix, but falling short of the playoffs. Ottawa, a few points back, not really in it. Montreal still buried in last place. I'll be interested to know here, structurally, how do you see the Atlantic Division? Do you see it kind of shaping up like that or differently?
I do. I see Leafs. I guess Lightning would be the next team. I think the next team could be the favorite. It all depends on Devin Levi, the rookie goalie. It's hard to do that sometimes, but if he can really start off on fire, maybe that will happen. And then I think the Panthers, like you said, are like that team on the bubble, because with the Metro, it's tough. I mean, there's going to be good teams in the Metro not making it either, but I think the Metro is a little deeper than the Atlantic. So that could mean still that one more Atlantic team makes it than the Metro, because the Metro is so hard that it hurts the teams there.
That's how I see it playing out. I think that's something that Detroit is going to benefit from, and to a certain extent Buffalo, who I think is going to be able to hang pretty close with where they're at, because I think in the Metro Division you've got, again, I've got New Jersey in first place, I've got Carolina and the New York Rangers not far behind at all. I think those 3 teams are the class of the division, and then, as I said a second ago, from there I've got it being the Islanders and Pittsburgh and Washington all kind of grouped up together. Philadelphia a little ways back of that, Columbus as well. How do you see the division shaking out, and in terms of especially the 3 powerhouse teams at the top?
Yeah, I think the Devils are a powerhouse. I think they're winning it. They're winning the division. I don't think Carolina did enough to get better. I think they did some good, but not enough good, and then maybe some bad, getting Tony DeAngelo back. I think you do have Devils, Carolina, Rangers finishing like that, and then I don't know if the Islanders make it, and I think the Penguins will be really close. And I think the rest of those teams in the division are out of it. I
do as well, yeah. It's a real thing of the haves and the have-nots, it does seem like, in that division. In the Western Conference, again, you've got a really interesting setup here in the Central Division. I've got Colorado winning it by a decent margin, but I see Dallas and Minnesota both over 100 points, both being relatively safe playoff teams here. I don't have anybody else in the division making the playoffs, but I think Winnipeg and Nashville will be hanging around for at least a good part of the season here. Chicago, not so much, although they're going to be well up from last year, obviously with their draft bounty here. And St. Louis and Arizona, I've got well back of there. To me, St. Louis is just beginning their inevitable rebuilding process here at this point, a point at which Arizona seems to be perennially in. By the way, another off season where they're going through arena questions here, where a real dog bites man story in the NHL, isn't it? But how do you see the Central shaking out here? Is it as kind of predictable as I laid it out there, or do you see any wild cards shaping up here?
I think the Stars could be the class of this year. I don't have a real good reason other than I think they're still adding more young talent, maybe someone like Logan Stankoven. I think they added some young talent last year. Jake Ottinger was one of the best goalies in the league. I like Georgia. I think Ottinger's better. Excuse me. So I look at it and I say, don't love the Blues. I think the Jets are going to have to go with Hurley and not get a chance to trade him. And I think based on that keeps them in it. But I think they're going to be a bubble team. I think if I had to pick three that I do like, it's the Stars, the Avalanche, and then the Jets. And then, Minnesota's always lurking.
Okay. Yeah, I've got Minnesota over Winnipeg, but I've been high on the Jets in the past here, so I can kind of see that now. They've had a decent amount of turnover since I've been high on them. By the way, we can't leave the Central Division without me mentioning this. Something that I glimpsed the other night when I was at the Ohio State Notre Dame game, where I probably came down with whatever malady you're hearing in my voice now. Filing out of the stadium, I see a guy in a Chicago Blackhawks jersey, but it's a green one, and I see a little leprechaun on there, and I said to my brother, what the hell is that? Now, my brother went to Notre Dame, so he knows these things. He said, oh, there's a lot of crossover in town here between the Blackhawks and Notre Dame, and so they have these Notre Dame-themed jerseys for the Blackhawks. I'm like, that is lame and unacceptable. And again, I don't think you have to be a dyed-in-the-wool Red Wings fan like me to come down that way on that one, Russ Cohen.
Well, I did cover the Winter Classic there, and Chicago did play there, so there is a connection.
Well, the way that they're trying to force it with the green Blackhawks jerseys, I wrinkled my nose at that one when I saw it. The Pacific Division, perennially here, it seems like Edmonton comes in with the best 1-2 punch in the league, which they've had for about the last half decade. It seems like they come in as either the favorites or co-favorites in the division, and yet they were not the team that was lifting the cup last year. That would be the team that I have picked for second place here, Vegas. But I think Edmonton is going to have another very strong season. I've got Edmonton behind them. Los Angeles, I see them as being a playoff team again, but I think they may take a little bit of a step back. I would say the same thing with Seattle. I think Calgary still has enough firepower at this point to where I would give them that last playoff spot. I've got Vancouver being on the bubble just as I did Winnipeg and Nashville in the other division. And I've got Anaheim and San Jose well back of that, unsurprisingly. So how do you see the Pacific shaking out, Russ?
Yeah, I think the Oilers will take it. Still like the Golden Knights second, Kings third. The Kings still getting better. Some of their young talent could help them. We'll see if this is going to be a big year for some of their younger guys. I mean, that would be nice. But overall, the Kings are still pretty strong. Diallo is really good for them. And their defense is there, and they always have Valley. So Seattle is the one where I think they're on the edge. I don't think they're going to get Shane right at the beginning. I think he's going to be in the AHL, so not sure where their extra firepower is going to come from. Maybe Veneers kicks it up a notch. We'll see. It'll be an interesting year, but I think it's those three, and then Seattle lurking. I think Vancouver has those. They're not going to do it. And the Flames, I think, are in trouble. They can't sign through their guys long term. So they may end up having to trade one or two of them, and that could be really bad for them if that happens.
They're in a weird spot. They really kind of are. For a team that was supposed to be in these last couple of years, neck and neck competitive with Edmonton. I've got them both in the playoffs, but I've got about a 20-point gap between them at this point here. As we're looking at this and we're looking at the playoff seedings here potentially, what are the places that you would say it would be most critical for a team to win the division? My guess would be sort of a tie between the Metro and the Central, because I have New Jersey as being the Metro champion, Colorado being the Central champion, and I think avoiding that meat grinder of a first-round series, to me, that puts Dallas and Minnesota, a second-round series. First-round series, that's right. And I've got it being Carolina and the Rangers facing off, which is a heck of a first-round series in the Metro, and I've got it being, again, Dallas and Minnesota in the Central, and that is something I think New Jersey and Colorado would really benefit from. Ironically, as I'm saying this out loud, two of my least favorite teams in the world, but how do you see it there? Would you agree that there are some divisions where it really, really behooves a team to finish first place so that they can avoid a very tough first-round matchup?
I mean, I can give you divisional winners. I'm not ready for playoffs or cup yet. Not enough has gone by for me for that. But as far as if we go through it, I think the Devils have to win the Metro. I do, because the minute you give the Hurricanes or the Rangers at home ice or that little bit of an advantage over the Devils, they're in trouble. So I think they do have to win it. They win it, and they get that, the extra home ice, and that helps some of their younger players. They're also adding Hughes this year, which is a big add. So, and Palat's healthy. So you do that, and I think that really helps them and sort of negates the others. I don't know if they can do it, but I think the Lightning have to win their division because, and again, are they not going to find Steve Stamkos beyond this year? Like, are they really going to be that dumb? I don't know. But we'll see. We'll see if they really are that dumb, because if not, I see them going to Detroit. But at any rate, they have to, because let's face it, we know if the Leafs have home ice or not, it's not going to matter. They can lose either way. They've done it so much that I don't think home ice even helps them. I think it's a detriment at times because their fans get on them. So I think the Lightning have to do it, or the Panthers. Like, if the Panthers somehow could do it, then it could be a great year. I mean, Spencer Knight is back, and he had OCD, and hopefully he's eaten that. That really helps them. Now, it may not, in the sense that Bob seems to do better when he's a lone wolf, but overall, there's going to be a year where Bob just falls out and they're going to need Spencer Knight. So, yeah, I think the Lightning really have to win their division. Then, moving over to the West, I think you can make the argument the Avalanche have to win the division, but really if they're just healthy and they have McCarr and everybody else, I don't think it matters that much. I think the Stars have to win the division, though. I think they do need home ice. I think that does matter for them because they still do have young players, even someone like Jason Robertson, who's become a superstar, still isn't a superstar at the level of like Crosby, maybe, where it didn't matter where he played, he was always going to excel. I think we saw Robertson kind of have a little up and down. So I think it's most important for the Stars to win that. But if the Avalanche do, it'll certainly help them. But I think it's one of those two. Then in the Pacific, I think the Oilers have to win it because there's always a problem with the Oilers. And maybe it's goaltending again. But I think they do have to sort of lock that division up. Because otherwise, if Vegas does lock the division up, that really does give them a nice edge. Logan Thompson's back this year. So we'll see if him or Aiden Hill's the starting goalie. I guess, while you're raising the banner, you got to have Aiden Hill start the first game at least, because it's kind of hard to raise the banner and not have him be the starting goalie when he won the cup for you. That would be awkward. So, but I do think in the end, I actually think the Oilers have to win the division more than the Golden Knights.
Well, here's how I've got it shaking out with my different playoff predictions here. We'll start with the Eastern Conference, and just give me a general overview of things that you might agree or disagree with. I've got the first round series going as follows in the Atlantic. Toronto over Boston in 6. I think Toronto draws a good first round matchup here for once, and I think the talent differential between them and where Boston is right now is enough for them to do it. I've got Tampa having home ice on Florida, but Florida winning in 7. I think they can get it done there. I've got New Jersey over Detroit in 5. I think whoever gets that last spot in the Eastern Conference is just going to be cannon fodder for one of the division winners. I don't think they have much of a chance to hang at all. I rarely, if ever, pick sweeps. So that's the main reason here that I'm saying 5 games, is that, again, times when I've been tempted to pick sweeps, a couple of years ago I might have been tempted to pick Tampa Bay over Columbus in 4, and of course that famously went the other way. So these are things where, again, you have to be careful on picking those. I've got the Rangers over Carolina in 7 in a real epic, although I have Carolina having home ice in that series. And so I've got it being from there, Toronto over Florida in 7, and New Jersey over the Rangers in 7, in what I think is going to be, I think those are both going to be very classic series. I've got New Jersey.
A repeat of last year. That, I will tell you, that'll damage the Rangers' psyche if that happens again.
Yeah.
Devils beat them again in 7 again.
Yeah.
They're going to make big changes like that. They're not going to sit well with that. Not going to sit well with them.
Well, it's going to be home ice, in my estimation, for New Jersey, and I think that could be the deciding factor there. And then I've got New Jersey over Toronto in 6 in the conference finals. So anything in the East that you would either wildly agree with or wildly disagree with on those?
Say that again.
Anything in the East where you would wildly agree or wildly disagree with where I've got
No,
various
actually,
teams slotted?
I pretty much agree with what you're saying. There's a part of me that wouldn't mind seeing the Leafs match up against the Rangers. That would be fun. That hasn't happened in a long time. I wonder how those fan bases would take it. So, but no, otherwise, don't disagree.
In the Western Conference, I've got Colorado getting some revenge here, winning over Seattle in 6 games. I have Dallas over Minnesota in 7 in the Central. Moving to the Pacific, I have Edmonton over Carolina in 6, Vegas over Los Angeles in 7. In the second round, I have Colorado over Dallas in 6, Edmonton over Vegas in 7. And I will just say, I have a feeling about this Edmonton team coming into this year. I have them beating Colorado in 7. I've got them making it to the finals, and not to tip my hand either way, but I was thinking for part of the offseason I might be actually picking them to win the Cup. Whether I stick with that or not, we'll see. But I have a feeling that they figure out the goaltending situation enough, which I realize is damning with faint praise, but that's how I have it going. So I'm sticking out my neck a little bit picking Edmonton to win the Western Conference, because anytime you say this is the year for them, that's always kind of a dangerous notion. But anything on my Western picks that you would either wildly agree or disagree with?
I mean, Edmonton can certainly do it. I don't wildly disagree with it. I don't know. Boy, there's some tough series there.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder about that Colorado series if it went a different way. But I think there's a few of them that could go either way. But Edmonton doesn't need a year like this, so it's very possible.
Well, and as I was saying, they were going to be my pick to win the Cup this year. And then with some of New Jersey's moves in the offseason here, I'm actually flipping that prediction. So even though that is a series where Edmonton would have home ice, I have New Jersey over Edmonton in 6, lifting the Cup there. And again, going back to the 90s, not something that I love doing as a team that stuck it to my Red Wings. So showing that I am very impartial in making that pick in the final here. But that would definitely be a very exciting and I think offensively minded final, would it not?
Oh, yeah, and it would save me a lot of travel money. Traveling just to the Rock is easy, so certainly would fit well in my pocketbook. It'd be interesting if that happened again. Flyers fans would hate it. Rangers fans would hate it. Islander fans would hate it. There'd be a lot of hate.
So tell me this. From a network perspective, of course, this will be the year that ABC gets the final again. This is a deal where, again, Edmonton, easily one of the most exciting teams in the league, probably top 2 or 3. But again, a team where, again, you're not getting any of the Edmonton market. They're watching it on their own TVs up there. So that's a thing where I would think on balance that would be something that the league would not be happy with, but probably not wildly unhappy because it would at least be exciting. What do you think on that one there, on how the league and the network would be thinking about that kind of a final?
Yeah, in the States it would be a ratings bonanza, that's for sure. But from a perspective of like ESPN and such being able to market Hughes and McDavid, I think they could create a lot of excitement online and otherwise. So you never know. Maybe the streams would make up for it on this one.
I tell you this, though. Oddly enough, I mean, it's hard to say that this would be the case when you're talking about a Canadian team being in it. It's hard to find a series that the league would probably prefer less. But my guess is they probably preferred Florida-Vegas less than they would prefer this one. This one might be a step up just because of the very exciting brand of hockey that would be played and the star power of Edmonton and the emerging star power of New Jersey. Do you get a sense that the league would like it a little more than they liked it last year?
Boy, I think, even though I know last year's ratings were not great, I think these would be even less.
Really? Interesting. That's a clip and save if it comes to this. Part of it was, too, again, being on TNT, there's always going to be the inevitable kind of a thing. An all-cable final, it's not really necessarily a fair comparison to when it's on network TV.
Right.
So there is that part of it as well. But very fascinating season that looks to be coming up. Any other thoughts for the season we didn't get to from you, Russ?
No, we covered everything. It'll be a fun Calder race. I haven't really fully decided, but certainly with Zard and Cooley and Levi and Van Tilly, that's a couple, 4 great guys right there, so it's going to be a great race for that.
Yeah, and Bedard, obviously the leader in the clubhouse here for that going in, and a guy that looks to give Chicago a nice jump in their rebuild here. So it is kind of funny that, like, just as Taves is going out the door, who represented the beginning of the last run. There is something that's very strange about that. Or if you were a conspiracy-minded kind of a guy, you might think it's a little bit more than strange that just as the one guy is leaving, the next guy is coming in to ensure their next guy.
I'm not buying it. Sorry. No.
A major market getting the superstar.
Not doing it.
Just saying.
No.
Well, we'll see how the season plays out. It is always fun breaking it down with you, Russ Cohen. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to catching up with you subsequently as the season gets going.
Yep. Same here. A lot of fun. Take care, Rick.
Thanks, bud. Great to have you on as always. Thank you, everybody, for checking out FDH Lounge Mini episode 1659.